Welcome gardeners, Enoch here with the Garden Journal on the Urban Gardener. This week, got a lot of things I've got going on here in the garden. Again, it's springtime. I'm taking advantage of another one of our really great spring days. And as I showed you last week in the greenhouse, we've got our tomatoes. They've already started to flower, which means they need to get into the ground real soon. And even though we've still got a little bit of cooler weather ahead of us, it should be all right to go ahead and get them out. If there's anything like frost coming up, I will protect them ultimately, but I'm going to have to make a real critical decision again about what I'm doing on my back fence line back there. I'll take you back and show you that in a little bit, but what I did promise you last week was a look around here on our back patio area. So we've got a lot of really cool things growing on and everything's looking really great right now. So I thought I would do another little catch-up look at what we've got going on here in our back patio. First thing I want to show you actually are our flower starts. We've got some edible flower starts here from the Johnny Appleseed Organics Gardening Invitational. These are going to be for our edible flowers, curated container arrangement, and they're all hardened off. I'm going to actually have to transplant these into larger containers here for the next few weeks until we're able to plant those out into our 45-gallon grow pots. So the other day I picked up these praying mantis egg cases here in this cool container with the top there, and it's got some netting there to keep them inside. So they're nice and cozy in there, just waiting to hatch. Not too keen on praying mantis. I don't know why. I really dig a lot of the garden bugs that are in the gardens, but for some reason praying mantis, they just creep me out a little bit. But thought we'd give them a try in the gardens this year and see how well they do. So keep an eye on these. Hopefully we'll have some little baby mantis hatchlings here soon. So one of the things I really love in the gardens are strawberries. We got these ones here in a 5-gallon container. Our plants are just looking really great all over the garden. Lots of big, beautiful green leaves. And look at all of these flowers that the bees are pollinating right now. So we should be getting lots of delicious strawberries here real soon. Not just in these spaces here in our back patio, but all over the gardens, in our front and in the back alley. Everything is looking really good. Now look over here, we've got our bed here with lots of our different lettuce varieties that are really starting to fill up the bed. Right up front we've got some pak choi. Already we've got one going to flower. This one's starting to curl up, possibly going to flower. Pak choi just doesn't do very well in my climate. Just goes to seed really fast. But I think I'll take up those greens real quick and we'll use that space for some seedlings I've got to plant out. But yeah, these other greens are looking really nice. Even that Merlot lettuce, nice dark red. Then there's this other elevated bed here with more greens growing in it as well. Just these ones not quite growing as fast and rapidly as I'd like them to be, and that's more because the sun is still trying to get up over our fence here, but it's starting to. Every day here should be getting better, and these should start really growing real soon. Then there's this really deep elevated bed we've got here back against the house, and we plant carrots in this bed as it's nice and deep to get some good carrot roots, and they're all looking really nice. As well as behind them we've got some beets. I'm gonna have to thin out there. Those beet greens will probably go good with that pak choy in a salad. And there's the back of this bed as well too. As you can see here, we've got this 1/2-inch hardware cloth here, and I had it laid out over the top of both of these here to keep our cats from getting on the bed here. But then I bent this around and thought, you know, maybe I can make something to go on the top of it, because what the cats actually like to do is just kind of walk across here as they kind of come through here. I don't know why, but I can't get them to stop doing it. And the other day I actually found George laying down inside here napping. So until I can find a way to close this off and create a way to have that fit on the top of there to keep them out totally, I'm just gonna have to live with the fact that George is gonna nap here, and that is better than them actually using it as a litter box. So much better to have them napping than going to the bathroom in my bed. But we'll just have to let that space for him stay there. We'll have to keep that open and make sure we're not planting anything there. So he'll probably keep going to that same spot for a while. And growing out of our 5-gallon wicking buckets, if you remember back with the potatoes, I took one of those seed potatoes, or a couple of them in fact, and transplanted them into our 5-gallon bucket here, and the plants are looking really nice. They're doing really, really well. And in these other 2 wicking buckets right next to them here, we've got some garlic growing. So when we harvest our garlic from the alleyway, we'll harvest up this garlic here and see how well those bulbs are growing in our 5-gallon wicking buckets. And next to those buckets, we've got a couple of 2-foot by 2-foot elevated beds here that have a wood cage in the middle of them. And around the bottom of those cages here, I've planted out radishes. Radishes are quick growers, and they're going to be ready to harvest here real soon. So you can see those roots are starting to bulb up real nicely. So we'll get those out of here real soon here, as well as our peas are really starting to take off here in the center of our cages. Those little tendrils are starting to grab hold of the sides there, so they should really start taking off here real soon. We'll be getting some fresh peas out of these before you know it. And also right over here as well on this wooden trellis we've got across the way, we did also plant out more peas here too. So they're really starting to take off. Should be seeing some flowers anytime now. And in this space here, next to the pea trellis, we grow Praxis cherry tomatoes. And in fact, they actually just volunteer for me. I spread out just a little bit of fresh compost there. And probably within the next week, we should start seeing some little tomato starts popping up. We'll probably get a whole bunch of them, and then we'll thin them out later on. And we'll have some nice, delicious cherry tomatoes. I look forward to these every year. This is my favorite tomato. I also got these other starts here. A bunch of different varieties of kale, some more of that Merlot lettuce. Looks really nice too. I'm gonna get these planted out into other spaces of the garden, as well as the spinach I've got. Spinach similar to that pak choi. Really cool weather plant. So it could possibly go to seed here real soon. And then we've got some kohlrabi too. So I'm gonna find a couple of spaces here around the garden, and we'll get those planted out. Back here I also started out some seeds that I took from our 137-pound pumpkin we grew last year. And I haven't decided quite yet if I'm going to actually grow these out. I just wanted to see how well the seeds would do. But they're producing pretty nicely. Each of the starts grew really well, so I don't know. We might have to try another pumpkin. About 7 years or so ago, I was out walking in the woods with a friend near their home and saw this really cool looking bush, tree, evergreen out in the woods, and thought I'd try to see if I could get a start off of it. So what I did is I just plucked a little piece, just like so, right off of the plant, and then I put it inside of a container just like this with some sand, and I kept it nice and moist for several weeks. And those little pieces started to put out roots that I planted out into a container. There it is. I said 7 years ago. Just a really nice, beautiful tree. So another update real quick here. This was our grapevine that I planted out many journals ago, and I just haven't seen anything growing off of this at all. I mean, I thought at first it was starting to put out little buds so that it could start growing, but nothing has happened yet. And this is the second year in a row I've tried growing one in this location. So I'm pretty sure that is our situation here, is it's this location. I am going to do a soil test and I'll check the soil here in this area. But this was the second year in a row here. So when I try again next time, possibly next season, we'll do it down at the end of the fence line. Now, as I showed you last week, we've got all of our soft neck garlic growing on the inside part of the fence line here, and down towards the end here where I've got these elephant garlic. We're going to be preparing the soil and getting it ready to grow our competition tomatoes. But the decision I made is we usually grow in these buckets. Actually, each of these buckets are actually open bottomed, so there's big holes in the bottom of these so that the roots can get through to the soil beneath. We usually grew them in those, but I'm going to switch it up this year, and I'm going to grow peppers in those, and I'm going to grow our tomatoes in the ground in between each of the buckets this year. I've got some poles back there that I'm going to use as stakes to hold them up, and I've got to get the soil prepared for them because they got to get in the ground. But we've got garlic, as I showed you, this soft neck garlic here, and I'm gonna have to, like I said, I'm gonna have to pull out this elephant garlic and all of this here in this area to get that area ready. But I'm going to actually, this is what I think I'm going to do, is in between each of these is where I'm going to grow the tomatoes. I'm going to end up keeping these ones here at the very end. There's 5 there. And what I'm going to try to do is just dig right in the center of each of these. So I'll take out the ones in the middle, and in between each of the buckets, I'll have the ones closest to each side. We'll keep those. So all in all, that should still give me 15 good heads of soft neck garlic when it comes time to harvest. And then we'll still be able to get those tomatoes into the ground like we need to. So I've never dug up garlic this early before. In May, I'm usually harvesting, usually towards the end of June. I don't know, these seem like really underdeveloped for even this time of year too. So maybe it's a good time we're saving the space and moving on to our tomatoes. But this will be something we can look for when we harvest up the rest of them and see how well those bulbs form when it comes time to do that later in the season. So now time to pick out the best of the two. We did grow these in pairs. We do have 10 different varieties here. Several of the varieties will get planted elsewhere in the gardens, and any of the extras I'll be giving away to friends and other local neighbors too who like to grow tomatoes. But this year's theme for this back fence line is dark tomatoes. So we're going to be growing a black Krim, a true black Brandywine. Also, we have a black Beauty, a Cherokee Purple, and we also have a Ukrainian variety from Baker Creek Seed Company called Black from Tula. So we used a number system here. We got to look for our best 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for our spaces. So what I decided to do here was to take the metal tomato cages that I already have that I've been using from previous seasons, and I just slipped them up over each of our poles, And we stapled them up to the fence there, so they're on there nice and solid. So we'll have double the support for these tomatoes as they get growing here. And I've amended each of the holes that we're going to be planting our tomatoes in. We put in about a couple of handfuls each of our sifted compost and our sifted chicken manure compost, plus a handful of our Johnny Appleseed Organics Climate Guard. So we'll mix up each of these holes here and plant out each of our tomatoes, except for I gotta show you this here. Number 10, I forgot to transplant into our bigger containers. Luckily, I still had the starts in the greenhouse. This poor little guy has been really held up, so we'll probably be behind everybody else, but we're still gonna give him a shot in there and see how well that does. But yeah, let's get these all planted in the ground, get our tomatoes growing. So now that I've got all of these planted into their spots here, everything's looking really nice. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna also kind of mulch them a little bit. I've got this leftover composted horse manure, and it's got a lot of kind of good chips on it there too. So it's kind of a real chippy compost. I'm gonna go ahead and use it more as a mulch along with all of these leftover fall leaves that I got here. And that should get these off to a really good start. All right, yeah, excellent. This is going to work out really well. Really fortunate for our friend to bring over these wood poles to use here for stakes, as well as these old wire cages that we can use together to really support these tomato plants. These transplants were definitely ready to be transplanted, so I'm glad to get them out into the garden space and watch them over the next few weeks as they start to fill up these cages and grow up those poles and start to produce us some really nice dark tomatoes this year. I'm really looking forward to being able to try those and taste those out later in the season. So that's where we're going to end it for this episode here. I really want to thank you all so much for joining with us and catching up with all of the things that we've got growing on our back patio here, planting out all of our tomatoes back here. And be sure to follow along with us this next week as we're going to get all of those peppers indoors all hardened off and all ready to plant outdoors here in our different garden spaces, as well as follow along with us on our micro pepper farm. So we're going to be getting those peppers that we've got in the greenhouse planted out into our garden farm plots out in Mike's front yard here real soon. And over the next few weeks, we'll also be putting out some more category videos for the Johnny Appleseed Organics Gardening Invitational. So be sure to check all of those out, and I'll see all of you on our next video. Of these beds, but until then, just gonna have to make sure that here where you can see I've got this wire mesh, this wire. Now this thing I got, so all right, there we go. We've got friend kind of give us these kind of. All right, let's try that again. As all of our no, what am I trying to say? On our next video. Yeah.